But the funny thing about about when we first met, I didn't know that you spoke Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you didn't have an accent or anything.
Sí, hablo español muy bien, chicos. No se crean, eh?
And then you were on the phone call with your mom. You started speaking like fluent Spanish, and I was like, wow, you speak Spanish. It didn't register to me, because I had heard your English was so good.
Yeah, and it was hard growing up. I mean, growing up, I had to speak perfect Spanish at home, and then at English, perfect English at school. And we're back with Perfectly Imperfect Love. And Mike and I are going to discuss today some of the cultural differences that might have affected us in our relationship. Just a little background of us. I'm Mexican, American first generation. Mike is white and black. I know he looks ambiguous. A lot of people have said, you look Moroccan, Arabic, Mexican.
Mexican, for sure. Everything but Chinese.
Exactly, yeah, Chinese. Even though there are some tall Chinese. We were in China, we lived in China, and there's some definitely tall Chinese people.
A lot of, the numbers.
Exactly, but definitely our cultural differences created a lot of issues in our relationship initially. I mean, my dad, born in Mexico, came here, lives the American dream now, but he was so typical about we had to be married in order to live together. That was, I think, the reason why, I know it was the reason why we rushed into getting married when we first started dating. For those that don't know, again, we got married 5 months after dating because Mike got cut from the Lakers and we were gonna go live in China, and he wanted me to go live and travel the world with him. And my dad wasn't having it. He was like, you remember the first time you met him too?
Yeah,
he sat you down. What did he say? He's like, what are your intentions with my daughter?
Yeah, it was just like the movies.
He literally, and he comes up to here. So my dad's
yeah.
Right? But my dad's this crazy little Mexican man. He lives very traditional. So, it was because of him that we rushed into that marriage, which created lots of crazy, and we were crazy in love, which was wonderful then. It's nice that we're not crazy in love anymore, though. I'm just going to say, I actually prefer us being peaceful in love now. Yeah. But there was so much drama because of it. You were not really familiar with the Mexican culture, right?
Yeah, I wasn't. Growing up in the Seattle area, at my high school, I think I had maybe 3 or 4 Spanish people in my whole entire school, so I didn't grow up at all around it.
Well, if you move to California, you end up marrying a Mexican.
Yeah, just like my brother too. My brother's married to a Mexican, so
that he met in California.
Yeah, he met in California. Yeah, so it's something about Mexicans in California.
Right. But you didn't know anything about it, right? The Mexican culture, you coming over on Sunday barbecue dinners and lunches. Yeah, it was mariachi was sometimes there. He's like, what? This is dinner? Yeah. It's like the movie Fools Rush In. I'm obsessed with that movie. Salma Hayek, she brings home Matthew Perry. Yeah. I think Matthew Perry, and he was like, this is normal? You guys do this?
Yeah, I was used to my family coming together on holidays, big holidays, but coming together every Sunday. I wasn't used to that.
Yeah, and it definitely created some issues in the sense of also that I'm so close to my family and you're kind of not.
Yeah.
It's you hardly talk to your mom. I think that's so weird for me. I'm I talk to my mom at least once or twice a week, on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah, we text. Me and my mom text, but we stay in touch.
Yeah.
But like you said, you growing up, with your dad being very traditional. I grew up with just my mom, so it wasn't really traditional, and she was never oh, you got to be married by this time. It's kind of on my own. Everything was with me, so that wasn't. But the funny thing about when we first met, I didn't know that you spoke Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you didn't have an accent or anything.
Sí, hablo español muy bien, chicos. No se crean, eh?
And then you were on the phone call with your mom. You started speaking fluent Spanish, and I was like, wow, you speak Spanish. It didn't register to me, because I had heard your English was so good.
Yeah, so. And it was hard growing up. Growing up, I had to speak perfect Spanish at home, and then at English, perfect English at school. I went to a school, South Pasadena High School was mostly, Caucasians, and so they made fun of you back then. Now I wish I had a sexy accent. I wish I spoke like Salma Hayek. But it definitely created that, that pressure growing up, and it's crazy because cultural differences even between me and like my father and my mother, like that created my own issues. You know, they grew up in Mexico, so like machismo was normal. The woman had to be submissive. And so even when we first got married 10 years ago, I played that role. I was like, okay, I'm gonna be the little housewife, and he was working, I was at home waiting for him to come home. I would cook cook and clean, and it was like I played that role. And I honestly think that hurt our relationship, because I didn't have power. I felt like I was sitting there waiting home for my husband to come and, you know, sassy time with me. But,
Sassy.
But you know, but it created even issues within like myself and the relationship with my parents, but let alone with us, you know. And I'm always so grateful that like you kind of went along with it. Like you're just like, okay, we'll get married. Like let's do that. And I proposed to you. That was also why I proposed. That was the thing. Yeah, you know, it was just like, if you want me to go to China, we have to be married. And it was just like we went to elope, Little White Wedding Chapel, where everybody
Vegas,
gets married.
Yeah, Britney Spears, Michael Jordan, you name it.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, basketball, the whole it's kind of like hip hop culture, you know. And I don't think you'd ever dated an athlete before.
No, you were my first.
Yeah, I was the first athlete, so just that whole different world, you know, growing up and seeing that. And then, being on the Lakers, I'm sure that was a big deal for you, and just being around that whole scene and everything.
Yeah, I didn't grow up with black people around. Like my high school maybe had 2 black students.
Yeah.
College, I mean, at Purdue, it was literally like the athletes. They were the ones that were black. Like that was about it.
Yeah, my high school was like predominantly white too. I was one of probably maybe 10. You know,
and your mom's side is all white though.
Yeah, so I grew up, like my dad's black, mom's white, so I grew up basically raised by my mom, and everybody on my side, my immediate family side is black except my uncle, and I have 2 cousins that are mixed like me. But I grew up all around white people, and then it wasn't until like high school when I started playing like AAU basketball, and I started going to the city like Seattle and like Tacoma. And all my teammates were black, so it was like high school was all white, and then I go to basketball, and it was all black. So I got a mix of both.
Yeah,
so,
and I felt that when we started dating, I felt like, because you had white friends and you'd act different with them, and then you had black friends. You're like, even like your language would change. You like had a little more swag with your black friends.
Yeah, it's different, you know. It's different, you know, being mixed. I can, you know, I guess I can be a little bit more white or a little bit more black at times.
Yeah.
But, you know,
But yeah, I mean, it created, conflict though, even with that, because I wasn't familiar with black culture. So for me, I was just kind of like, what? Like, I don't know. I felt it to be very, you know, the music was disrespectful to me, which that's like their language. And so like that was something like getting used to, like you listening to like certain types of music. I was just like, ugh, like this is what you're putting in your brain.
And I think for both of us, you didn't know about the black culture. Yeah. I didn't know about the Latino culture.
Yeah.
So we both kind of learned like together. And I think that's what kind of brought us close in the beginning, was because we were both foreign to our like growing up in our backgrounds.
I know, and nowadays there's so many mixed relationships, and it's beautiful because you start to learn and just appreciate other people's culture. You know, you've learned to appreciate like me speaking Spanish and like being all Latina and like sexy Latina, you know, like and me like learning also to embrace the modern Latina culture, because like I said, my mom and dad grew up in Mexico, and like here in America, like with us, you know, I make money and I should be able to have power. And I think that creates a healthy relationship, whether you're in a mixed relationship or whether you guys are the same culture. I think 2 people need to be powerful, need to like own who they are, and culture has evolved. And so we should evolve, you know, the machismo and like Marianismo. If you don't know what that is, it's basically the woman's role in machismo. And she's just supposed to be there and be submissive. And I don't know about you guys, but like women back then weren't that happy. They just kind of like stayed quiet. And, you know, again, this is just me looking in on from the outside, seeing how my mom is and being so submissive and just kind of keeping all her thoughts to herself. Like, I don't know, that's a huge cultural issue now with like older generation Latinos to like newer generation. Yeah,
like you said, it's a whole new generation. When like your parents grew up, it was the dad or the father, you know, go to work and the mom stay home, you know, cook, you know, keep the place like nice and clean. But now it's like reverse. Like women, they don't need men, you know.
We want men.
They're
we don't need them, girls.
They're making their own money, you know, making their own power moves.
Yeah.
You know, moving up in all industries.
Yeah.
So so I could see how the generation before us, could see it might not disagree with the generation now, just how much power women have.
Yeah,
So,
and if you're in a relationship where there is culture conflict, I think it's just learning to be open-minded and learning to speak with compassion. I think compassion is something that we all need to really take time to do with, just with Black Lives Matter and all these different conflicts within people, Republicans, Democrats, it's cultural differences really, because it's one culture against another culture, and it's learning to be compassionate no matter what. Because at the end of the day, why are we all just going to be angry? And if somebody else is different, it's not bad. It's just like, okay, that's who you are. Let me embrace you and let me accept you. But that also comes with you accepting and embracing yourself. Like, I've learned to embrace and accept myself, that I'm not like my mom, and I love my mommy and she did it her way, but like, I'm learning different ways. I'm a businesswoman. I'm a host. I like to, I'm an influencer, what they call it. I'm embracing who I am, and that's why I'm able to embrace other cultures. Even Mexicans embracing Puerto Ricans. There's this hierarchy that people talk about, like, who's better? The Puerto Ricans, the Mexicans, the Venezuelans, like, everybody has their own opinion, but at the same time, like, let's just all be equal and embrace each other's culture. And I think that ultimately is how we're trying to grow. We're trying to become people that are more highly conscious and accepting. And I'm really hoping that's where we're going because there's just so much hate in the world right now. And it not just in relationships, but just friendships and people.
Yeah, I think the big thing with us is we've traveled so much around the world, so we've gotten to experience all different cultures. So I think it's just helped us open our eyes to just all the different cultures and how different they are than ours. And so that's the big thing, I think, is just being able to travel and just take in people's cultures.
Yeah.
And just learn from that and take that with you as you move on in life.
Exactly. And not, the not feeling of entitlement of like, oh, well, my culture is better than your culture. I remember when we moved to China, little kids are literally going number 2 in the middle of the street. They don't believe in diapers out there, right? And so even just that, I remember 10 years ago when we lived there, I was thinking like in my head, like, oh, how could they do that? That's different. And it's just like, yeah, people are different. And then, but as we, like you said, as we started to live, when we lived in Japan 9 months, like how the Japanese are so different than the Chinese, but you start to see that like everybody has their uniqueness. Yes, some things are a little more positive, some things a little more negative, but I mean, that's what's going to make, us being able to connect to all different types of races, and travel helps so much. Yeah,
travel helps a lot. There's a lot of people, like, including my mom, who've like never been out of the country.
I know.
So I'm just like, it doesn't even have a passport.
And it's harder to be able to be compassionate to other cultures when you haven't seen other cultures.
Yeah, when you haven't left. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we just went to Peru and Costa Rica last year. Peruvians and Costa Rican people are so different than Mexicans. Not good, not bad. Yeah. The common thing is that we all like rice and beans, you guys. That is the truth. Well, sadly, this is the end of this show, but follow us on Get It Girl TV and LATV Network. See you next week.